feel a little tingly. I feel like I could almost just close my eyes and just go to sleep. But we're not going to do that. We are going to talk about agreements. So, how many of you have made some agreements in your life? Just a few, right? Just a few. So we're going to be talking about divine agreements. So I want to welcome everyone online today, welcome everyone that's here today, and for you new folks, welcome again. My name's Reverend Dr. Ellen, and I am so happy to have made an agreement to be with all of you today. So let me grab my notes, because I do actually have some talk notes for today, because there were so many things that I wanted to talk about today when it comes to agreements. So we're going to be actually talking through agreements based on the 4 agreements. So actually over the next month, for the whole month of February, we're going to be talking about the power of agreements. And let me go ahead and just click on the next slide here, because the 4 agreements, how many of you have read the book, out of curiosity? Oh, look at that. We have a lot of people here that have read the 4 agreements. So as you can see, I've got all my sticky notes in here. I read this book many, many, many years ago, did a class in it, and I was so excited to have the opportunity to speak on it here. So today we're actually just going to be talking about agreements themselves, and we're going to get into the 4 agreements over the next 4 weeks. But you know, when we talk about agreements, and obviously if you've read the book, you're familiar with what Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, which is that, you know, we make agreements even before we come here, right? There's what's called soul agreements. And how many of you believe that your soul made an agreement to come into this body, not this one, yours, although I welcome some of you, you're welcome to bring your spirit and you know, right? We all want to embody each other's spirit, right? But we made an agreement to come into this form to the parents that we, you know, chose for the lessons that we needed to learn. So those are our soul agreements, but there's so many other agreements that we make. There's the agreements that society has made with us. And so he talks a lot about how we've become domesticated, right? And all of those agreements that are made to keep us, what? Right? Conforming, to keep us, what was it? In line, right? They conform us, they keep us in line, they keep us in control, right? And it's all based on fear. It's all based on fear, but it's also based on, you know, rewards and consequences. And so if those agreements are not serving us, it's time for us to have some new agreements. And so we're going to get into, you know, what these 4 agreements are over the next few weeks. But first, let's look at, you know, what is an agreement? Let's just kind of take a giant step back and say, well, if I've made all these agreements, what exactly is an agreement? What is an agreement? It's a promise, right? So I promise to do X, Y, Z. That's an agreement. What other agreements are there? What other types of agreements? Contracts, right? So we make a contract. We sign a contract. So we agree to follow whatever that contract is. When you get a bill in the mail, right? How many of you love those bills? Amy put her hand up. Yes, I love those bills. Well, it's an agreement, right? The electric company gave you power. The water company lets you turn the water on. And, you know, that's an agreement that says when the bill comes, guess what? You got to pay. You got to pay, so it's agreement. And I used to dread those bills when they'd come. I did. I used to dread those bills until I realized I've already gotten the service, the product, the program, right? It's an agreement. It's a promise that I've made that if I use this service, that I will pay for it. And it also means that I'm prosperous, because if I got a bill for something, that means I can pay for it. So how many of you would like to agree to that? Yes. I want everybody's hand to go up. And online you can say yes, 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 and yes. Right? And I love that I get bills now, because the more bills I get, no, really. We'll talk about this next week when we talk about our word. But the more bills I get, the more prosperous I am, because that means that I'm stepping up into my highest and my best. I'm saying yes to things that I want in my life. So the more things I say yes to, right, the more agreements that I'm making. Now, so we have, you know, it's a promise. It's also something that's negotiated. Right? when we make agreements with each other, I think about all the committees and groups and ministries that we're in. We sit and we make agreements with each other about what we want to do. Right? And we do it also for harmony. Think about all of the agreements that are made in the world. Treaties, right? Pacts. Right? They're for harmony. There are so many agreements. There's actually trade agreements, free agreements that we have with over 20 countries in the world, right? So that we can trade with each other, an agreement. So we have covenants. And then, let's think about when we were kids. How many of you made spit or blood agreements? Do you remember those? Right? Yeah, you prick your finger or you spit, right? With your hand, right? So, yeah, exactly. What were we agreeing to as kids? What were some of those agreements? We agree to be friends with each other, right? What else? Keep secrets. Ooh, right? Those kinds of agreements. Right? How about the candy swaps that we did around, Halloween? I made agreements with my siblings that I would trade candy, but they did not agree to not take the ones that I put up on the shelf. Right? We'll get into what happens when we break agreements, but we make different agreements at different ages and stages of our lives, obviously. But yeah, we have the candy swap. We also agree with with our parents that yes, we will walk the dog. How many of you have broken that agreement? Or in my house, scoop the litter box. You know who I'm talking to? Right? We agree that if we take on certain responsibilities, that we will do certain things in return. And we don't always follow through. Right? So what happens when we break our agreements? Oh, it hurts. It not just hurts the other person, but it really does hurt ourselves. So the most important agreements are the ones that you do make with yourself. And Don Miguel Ruiz talks about that quite a bit in the book. But let's also look at some other agreements that we make with ourselves. So how many of you have made some agreements this year to do something different, right? To be someone different, to accomplish some things, those personal agreements, those goals, and I know Dr. Herbert has been talking quite a bit about that in January, right? These new agreements that we're making with ourselves, these goals that we want to achieve in our lives, and the power of that. Right? So eat healthier, go to the gym, come to our spiritual centers, be a good friend, those types of agreements. Then we have the professional agreements. So how many of you have a job, had a job, a career, business? Right? Pretty much everyone, at some point. So when you go to a job, what are you agreeing to? You're agreeing to show up. Right? You're agreeing to do the work. And in exchange, what is the reward for that? We get a paycheck, right? We get bills, right? We get promotions. We have a career. We have vocations. Right? Think about our lives are literally dictated by agreements. And what happens when you no longer agree with the way things are being done somewhere? Whether it's your job, right, or your relationships? Do we stay in those agreements? Yeah, we sometimes stay, we make a new agreement. Right? We decide this agreement is no longer serving me, so it's time for me to leave and move on and do something else. So the professional agreements. We also agree when we become professionals, whatever our profession is, that we are going to continue being at our highest and our best. So, we'll go back to school and get our master's or our doctorate. We become ministers. We get our CMEs, or we take classes. Right? There's that agreement that if I'm going to be a part of something, whether it's professionally or spiritually or even personally, that we are going to continue to develop ourselves because we want to be the highest and our best. That's an agreement that we make. And again, when we fall down from that or we don't follow through, don't feel so good. Right? It does not feel good. So when we look at all these different types of agreements, right, we make agreements with each other. We agree that we're going to be friends, or we agree that we're going to pick you up and, take you to your doctor's appointment. Or we agree that, we're going to go to the movies together. Or we have to, again, there's that negotiation part of agreement. Well, I want to go see, 80 for Brady? Right? Oh, no, I want to go see the Avatar movie. Well, maybe we want to go see both, but, right? We come to an agreement about what we're going to do, right? And how we're going to move forward. So, there's other things that we do as far as agreements within our own, relationships and at home. Besides agreeing to walk the dog, scoop the litter box, there are agreements with your partner, right? How you're going to run your home. How many of you have an agreement that the last one who gets up in the morning makes the bed? All right, good. I wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one. Have you ever tried to make the bed when your partner's still in it? I actually have done that. I will pull up my side, put all the pillows, and then, when he gets up, he just has to make his half, right? Because I thought it was only fair, right? The last one up should make the bed. But again, what happens when you walk into your room and the bed's not made, right? You're upset. Your trust is broken. Right? When we break our spiritual agreements, right? Or when we feel like, well, God didn't support me, or I didn't win the lottery. I prayed on that. Right? I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed on that, but I didn't get the winning ticket. Right? We feel let down. We feel lost sometimes when our agreements are broken. And it does absolutely hurt relationships when we break our promises with each other. And we have to constantly renegotiate. I'm always renegotiating in my house about the sink full of dirty dishes. There is not a day that goes by that we don't have to have a new agreement about the dirty dishes. Right? We're doing better on the bed. Doing much better on the bed. So how do we keep our promises? How do we keep them? So we have verbal promises or verbal agreements with each other. I tell you I'm going to do something. But we have those contracts that we sign. And I want you to think about this for a moment. I want you to close your eyes for just a second. I want you to think about what contract would you sign? The one contract, if you could only sign one contract in your entire life, what would that contract say? You don't have to answer, but I just want you to think about that. What would be the one contract that you would want to make in your whole life? All right, so go ahead and open up your eyes. But here's an affirmation that I want you to state. Right, here's one contract that I want you to make, and that is, I agree to be me. Everybody? I agree to be me. And if you're watching online, go ahead and please type that into the comments field. I agree to be me. Because who else can you be? No matter how much I'd want to be Katie and get up there and play the piano, I know I can't. I can never speak like Dr. Herbert, right? All the great stories he tells. Okay? I've always wanted to be Bonnie Raitt, but I will never be able to. I still want to be like Bonnie Raitt, but I can't sing like Bonnie Raitt. I can only be me. I could be the best me that I can be. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I can't be anybody else. That's an agreement that I'm making. I agree to be me. Right? You don't have to like me. I like me. That's all that really matters. Right? Yes, we want to like each other, obviously. But the agreement that we want to make is being true to ourselves. Right? I want to like me. I want to know that I'm honoring myself and honoring what's important to me, and I'm honoring my agreements. So when those bills come, right, I open them. I used to put them away. I used to hope, okay, well, maybe the money's going to come in time. I'll open it then. Now I open them. I have a folder that says bills, and I have all kinds of affirmations that I took off of my calendar that I taped inside that folder. That's another way we keep agreements, is we remind ourselves, right? Sticky notes are a great way to remind yourself of an agreement. Right? There's also habit trackers. Right? For all those new agreements you made with yourself, okay, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to do my arm lifts. Right? I'm going to floss my teeth. Can you believe at 64 you still have to put that on your to-do list? Remember to floss. Right? So how do you keep track of all these agreements that you've made? Right? Well, why not use the technology that we have? Habit trackers are great. They remind you, oh, you didn't do this thing yet that you said you were going to do. But you still have time. It's 11:59. Go into the bathroom and floss your teeth. Right? Because you don't want to see the graph that shows, oh, you only did that 2 times this week. Not so good. Not so good. So sticky notes are another great way for you to do that. So as I said, what happens when we break those agreements? Right? We don't feel good about ourselves. We feel guilty. We feel shameful. Right? That's not a good feeling. I don't want to feel shame for breaking an agreement. And I certainly don't want to hurt anybody's feelings by not following through on something I said I was going to do. I'm going to out him. He's sleeping on the couch right now. And he said he was going to come today. Right? But he stayed up all night working. So, right, yeah, I was a little disappointed, but not hurt. And one thing we can do when people break agreements is move into forgiveness, right? Move into forgiveness. I know Teresa's going to do a whole prayer meditation in a couple weeks, right, on forgiveness. So broken agreements are, unfortunately, they are a part of life because even though we are divine beings, we are also experiencing being human. Humans break agreements. They make mistakes. And so we can move into forgiveness when that happens. But does the credit card company forgive you when you're late? No, what do? They tack on fees and interest charges. Of course, you can call them and apologize and say it'll never happen again, and I was only a day late, and I've never been late before, and you know what they will do? They will refund that, 9 times out of 10, right? Ask for forgiveness, right? Ask and ye shall receive. No ask, no give. That's my favorite expression. No ask, no get. So you may as well ask. So there's the consequence of broken agreements, penalties, fees, broken, damaged relationships. But there's also rewards when we keep them. Right? I had a goal at the beginning of the year to lose the 4 pounds. I know it's not a lot, guys, but 4 pounds on me feels like 50. But I had a goal to lose 4 pounds by a couple more weeks from now. And I'm this close. And it feels really good. It feels really good. It might be small. You don't have to have a major goal in your life to have the reward of feeling like, yeah, I followed through. I did what I said I was going to do. And the scale tells me, yes, you did it. Or you zip up your pants and feels good, right? After the holidays, after, COVID, what is they call it, the COVID-15 that people gained. Some it's COVID-25, right? Not to make light of COVID, but people put on weight. And over the wintertime, we tend to put on more weight. So if one of your goals this year was to lose weight, then, the reward is when you get on the scale, there's that magic number. You zip up your pants and you got the reward. But we also know there's those monetary rewards that come. And here we go once again using technology. There are apps that you can use that if you don't reach your goal, you got to pay up. The app actually makes you pay up because you put in your credit card and you said where you want your money really not to go, but if you don't reach the goal, it sends your money to someplace, right? So if that's going to motivate you, why not? Right? But that is part of the system that we, are in. Reward, consequence, consequence, reward. So when we make agreements, even if there is no monetary consequence, there's that internal consequence when we don't reach the goal or when we, miss the goal. So let's take a look at what our lesson is. So our lesson really today on agreements is that, agreements that we make with ourselves or others should support our goals. They should support our values. Right? They should support our principles. If they don't, Why would you choose to make that agreement? And then if you're in an agreement that is not serving you or the people that you're with, it's time to, break the contract. It's time to end that agreement. Because we get to choose. Right? We do absolutely get to choose those agreements. Everything in your life, believe it or not, is a choice. When that alarm goes off in the morning and you're like, oh, I don't want to get up. I have to get up and go to work. I have to get up and go to church. I have to get up and go to school. Do you? Do you really? No, you are choosing to because of the reward. Right? Community, that's a reward. Consequence, God, if I don't go to work, I'm going to get fired. If I get fired, I'm not going to get paid. If I get paid, I'm going to lose my house. Right? Consequences. Reward, consequence. That is, we make those choices. But think about the other aspect of this, which is unity principles. Right? The 5 principles. We live our lives in agreement with those principles. And the 5th principle is to practice the principles. It's one thing to know that God is all, right? Everywhere, all the time. I am a divine expression of God, so I am good. My word co-creates with God. Right? I commune with God through prayer. It's great to know all that intellectually, but unless I embody it, unless I agree to those principles, I'm really not in principle. Right? So the 5th principle is really that divine agreement that we make to live these principles. So let me go ahead. I actually pulled from the 4 agreements box of cards, a few different cards here. So this one is about speaking the truth. So when you hear an opinion and believe it, you make an agreement, and it becomes part of your belief system. The only thing that can break this agreement is to make a new one based on truth. Only the truth has the power to set you free. And we do make those agreements when we come here. So no matter what your age or stage, whether you're young, you're a child, and you have an agreement that says, I'm going to be good, right? I'm not going to break the rules, right? You go to school, you do your homework. Young adults make agreements all the time, right? Get a good job, get married, have kids, right? A marriage is a vow, that's an agreement. Same thing when you get divorced, right? There's agreements that go along with that too. We have, alimony, we have child support. Our life is dictated by agreements. And when we die, what happens when we die? What is one of the biggest agreements that we live by there? Life insurance. Right? Yeah, the spiritual agreement, and then there's obviously the human agreement. Again, think about all the different contracts and agreements that dictate our lives. So we are always in agreement. So the question really right now is, what agreement is going to serve my life? It's going to serve me to the highest and the best. So we want to be making fair agreements. Fair agreements, and stick to them. Stick to them. So our agreements that we want to make with each other, with ourselves, with the planet, should be fair to everyone. And the only types of fair agreements really are divine agreements. Divine agreements. And the word divine means godlike, right? Of God, divine. It also means delightful, right? Oh, that was so divine. So think about the agreements that you want to make for yourself, for your life. No matter what age or stage that you are in your life, you can always choose a new agreement for yourself. So let's finish up with this affirmation, which is, I am a divine being and I choose a life of joy, love, and abundance. So let's say that together. I am a divine being and I choose a life of joy, love, and abundance. So we are going to focus on choosing those divine agreements for ourselves this entire month, and actually the rest of our lives. Because even though we're just talking about these agreements for the month of February, does not mean that you're going to forget about them come March 1st. So I'm going to finish up with kind of a preview of next week. We're going to move into talking about the first 3 agreements, and that is be impeccable with your word is next week. So this one is release or realize the power of your word. Your word is the power that you have to create. It is a gift that comes directly from God. So let's finish one more time with I agree to be me. Everyone? I agree to be me. All right, thank you. Namaste.